Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Moviemaker magazine. My name is Danny De Lillo and I'm so delighted to be joined with Alisi with her fantastic film, The Fourfold. Let's take a look at the clip. Alisi, it's so nice. We're LA to Berlin today, even though you're from Canada, which is really cool. Listen, thanks for bringing this really, really important story that the whole world should know and hear about, and for delivering it in your wonderful style of animation. But for those that haven't seen it, tell us a brief synopsis of your film.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. So The Fourfold is a short animated film painted by hand on a single piece of paper, mixed with some plants and other mixed media. And it's based on this ancient animistic beliefs and shamanic rituals from Mongolia and Siberia. And it was narrated by my grandmother. I interviewed my grandmother. And so she talked about all these rituals. And then I realized that how they're relevant in our contemporary moment, because there are lots of wisdoms from this indigenous perspectives in our time of climate change.
Well, firstly, your grandmother is a great voiceover artist. She's really, really good. I hope she knows she's got a career ahead of her, because she delivered everything so wonderfully well. This was a really fantastic story. It really, really was, and so, you know, it's such an important one to tell, not just to the people from Siberia, Mongolia, but for the whole world to hear about it too. Where did the inspiration come for you in deciding to turn, you know, these stories into a film?
Yeah, sure. So I heard about these rituals as a child. I've seen some of the rituals being practiced on the grassland when I was a kid. So and then at that time I only heard that because my grandparents used to live as nomads on the Mongolian grassland. They have a different perspective how humans relate to nature, and I heard lots of stories from them. And then when I grew up, I learned that these are called the belief system, or the practice are called animism. And then it covers kind of all indigenous peoples around the world, not just Mongolia, Siberia, but for example, like South America or Native Americans. There are lots of indigenous people. They share very similar beliefs and practices, how they relate to nature. And then, but the thing is that animism was kind of from an anthropology perspective, actually from Britain, by a British anthropologist. But I mean, he defined it, but at the same time, it has a colonialist ascription, because he's saying that the West has advanced to the highest stage of science, while the rest of the people were still animistic or primitive. And then the word kind of being shunned, animism was kind of being shunned. But then in the past 20 years, there's like an emergence of return to the sacred and return to the earth spiritualities around the world, and also this indigenous indigenous visions. There's an emergence and reconsideration how it connects to like climate change and the protection of natural resources. So yeah, that's how I decided to make the film.
Well, as I mentioned in the festival yesterday, after watching your film, it just made me want to go outside and be in nature and just appreciate the earth and the planet. And I try to do that anyway, but it was just so nice through your stories and, you know, through these, you know, important stories that's what it did, you know, and just the importance and appreciation we must have for Mother Nature, you know. What I mean, it must have been quite special taking it back to the family perspective, you know, to tell your grandma that I'm going to make a film about this. Was that quite special that you'd learned this from a child and then you're like, I'm going to make a film? How was that reaction? I bet that was quite nice for your grandma too, right?
Yeah, I mean, she didn't understand at the beginning. So and then we did so many takes of the interview, because sometimes the sentence wasn't complete, and I would ask her further question. For example, she talked about this milk libation, which is pouring milk as a ritual, as a ceremony to worship Mother Earth, and yeah, etc. And then I asked her about this ritual, and she would tell me like why they do it. But at the same time, I have to ask further, like why milk is used, not honey or not water. And then she would be like, because milk is crème de la crème, it's the best for nomadic people, for nomadic culture. That's why they're using the best to offer as an offering for nature. So I have to ask further question to let her speak more.
Oh, well, I also, I think the wonderful thing is the way you delivered this through your animation. And my goodness me, I love the journey you took us on and the techniques that you used. Tell us a little bit about how you decided to kind of capture this story from an animation perspective, because it was just a really wonderful journey. I was kind of like, I felt like I was in this dream watching this. It was really wonderful. So tell us a little about that kind of journey from an animation perspective.
Yeah, thank you. So the animation, so in my technique, it's an under camera animation workflow. I was inspired by the work of William Cantridge when I was an animation student, not that long, but about 10 years ago when I started animation. And then basically he animates over and over on the same piece of paper. He just draws and animates and then erase the previous frame, then take a picture and then over and over again. So you could see the traces of his labor. And then when I saw it, I was like, wow, I was very inspired. And then instead of just drawing, I decided to use painting and all kinds of different materials. It's like a collage. And so it's like all painted on one piece of paper. It's basically a time-lapse photography of painting. And that's the process. So because I work by hand, I work with this painting materials. It's a very direct expression of my creation. I think it's a creative mind. It's a direct expression because I'm working by hand. It's a hands-on material.
I love that you said it was a direct expression, because it really felt, it really felt the essence of your expression obviously in there, but it was a really great style because it really gave us a lot of feeling, to when we were watching it. So that certainly worked anyway. I'm just so curious, like making an animation in this particular style, like how long does that take, and what are kind of some of the challenges that you have in making it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question because some people would say maybe it's taking longer. Why would you could do it in digital, but actually I also did some digital animation. I talked with some animation friends who also makes 2D and 3D animation. Actually, my under camera animation style, it's not that long because I don't have lots of post-production. Because why? I just work with what I have and then it's very hands-on. Then when the picture is done, it's done. Basically, if I have to go back, I have to redo the whole scene or redo the whole shot. And I kind of don't go back. I just keep going on. If there's a mistake, I kind of it's part of the process. So I keep going on. So ended up, I don't have lots of post-production. It's kind of the same time as the other animation techniques, either in handmade or digital. Yeah.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating. And well, I told you I felt so much for me. It was about, I love the story and I love learning about it. I also love the history behind it, but also made me in touch with just what we should be appreciating. I'm just curious, from what you learned as a child when you were hearing these stories, what did you want your audience to kind of experience? What do you want them to take from your film?
Yeah, I think that I just want them to understand, even myself, and I think that there's an important message is how humans relate to nature. There's a different model outside of this kind of, this anthropocentric way, which is putting human at the center of the universe and then exploiting many objects and considering the planet as object, and then considering there are many planets to be exploited one after another one. So it's outside of anthropocentric perspective. So I guess that's the message, and it's very present in indigenous knowledge, wisdom, and also in Europe as well. I think it's more before modernity. Yeah.
And one of the things that you gave us too, I mean, the sound had a very important, influence into how we're feeling that particular moment. How is that experience kind of mixing it with, creating the animation perspective, but then the sound, because the sounds, like you could close your eyes and you could feel the energy as well. Was that something that was clear for you, or did you kind of discover it as you went along?
Yeah. So when I was making the animation, I wasn't clear about the sound or I know that there will be lots of sound effects, but I wasn't sure about the song. I know there will be some music or song, but I wasn't sure. And at that time, I was hearing the music of Hunhur. They're a music group from Siberia, from Tuva, Siberia.
Oh,
And they
wow.
do throat singing, and they also work with some traditional musical instruments. And they did a collaboration with a female choir from Bulgaria, from the mountains. And they are called Angelet. They did a collaboration. So it's like there's throat singing and musical instruments with this choir, many layers of women sound. And they did the song called Wave, which is like the mountain waves or sea waves. And in my animation, I feel like the nature elements has so many layers, and I wanted to have something, the song is also kind of have similar qualities. Then when I heard this song, I was like, that's it. And yeah, I contacted them for the permission. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I mean, it really gave such an essence to what you were creating. So, you know, I'm glad that you found them, and it's wonderful to have them part of your film as well. What is next for you that you're working on right now, Alisi?
Yeah, I mean, everyone is affected by the pandemic. So I was supposed to go for a research trip in Siberia. Maybe you know
Yes.
Lake Baikal. Lake Baikal is in the north of Mongolia. It's in
Oh,
Siberia.
wow.
It's the largest freshwater lake in the world. So there are still lots of indigenous people living around the lake. And my research was supposed to learn more about this human, non-human relationships. But then I cannot do the trip, I cannot do any voice interview or anything. So right now I started the animation just based on what I know and online materials. I will see how it goes.
You're working around the pandemic. That's pretty impressive. Well, I can't wait for the world to open up so you can go on that trip. And I love that it's going to be coming from your voice and your essence of creation. It's really amazing. I honestly love your creative vision. Like I really do. And you know, there's a lot of animators out there that, you know, I'm sure would love to just hear is there any piece of advice you could share of what may be something that you go by that's important to you, which help you on your journey as an animator, as a filmmaker, as a storyteller?
Well, I think that, yeah, I mean, animation is a long journey, especially independent animation. It's a journey of solitude, pretty much. Because if you're a one-person team or two-person team, it's like you're working on your own. But I think that you just have to keep going, keep doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's important. I mean, I loved even just that you said, you know, you've been halted to go to Siberia and be at the freshwater lake with these amazing people, but you're still working on it. You know, you're still like, okay, how can I move steps forward to sort of make it happen? So that's amazing. Well, listen, I love what you created for us. I love the Fourfold. I love this story, and I just want to keep seeing more movies from you. So just want to say thank you on behalf of New Filmmakers LA for being part of the film festival, and we can't wait to see more of your work. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.